Okay, you guys, so I have this interesting video that I'd like to cover for you. Clash had reached out to me. I had talked about him in my last video. He said that he had created Zone with Delita. Then, the other day, he's asking me to do a class action. But then he starts arguing with me. And so, for some reason, he says, I was the manager of Valicorlia/Carlia, which was the first player world outside of the classic server. Graal Zone was just a side project with Delita. This guy is making up fucking history, dude. Everybody's been making up history to you guys. Why would everybody be doing that? But it's happening. It's happening. And it's like mind-blowing to me that everybody is so pathetic that they're doing this. Even Stefan and Unixmad. Well, I mean, obviously, Unixmad's doing it because he's profiting off of it. So anyways, I'm like telling him that that's not true. He's just arguing with me. Looking through these messages, he's just sitting here arguing with me about how Valicorlia is the first player world. I'm just talking about stuff that's irrelevant, and this, and that. He doesn't even know what the fuck I'm talking about. Tyne convinced Unixmad to make Carlia accessible via a portal before the server list existed. You guys, I'm gonna fucking goddamn prove to you that all of this is made up. So I blocked his ass, and he's just like talking on and on and on. Valicorlia existed prior to Graal 2001. It was a player world as far back as 1999. I said no. I said, Valicorlia was hosted on somebody else's G server. It was just their personal game. It was not marketed as a player world. A player world is a separate business side project that became a part of Graal. The Unixmad Cyberjure publishing material. It was a marketing strategy that appeared in the year 2000. And so prior to this, the G server, which stands for Graal server, was being used by other independent game studios such as myself. And so Valicorlia was using a Graal server, which is the G server. It's an application. And it was hosted on whatever server you hosted it on. It was not marketed as a player world. Player world is a separate marketing concept. And that is where Stefan and Unixmad started to claim that they owned the games, which they didn't. So they had a business that they were trying to sell the Graal Zelda 3 clone that was on Unixmad's computer, and it was failing. And so what happened was the G server was going to be an opportunity where they're going to let people host their own games, and eventually they're probably going to try to charge people to use it. But instead what happened was Stefan and Unixmad realized that they needed to have control because they had no marketable products. Nobody wanted to pay for the G server. Nobody wanted to pay for Graal Gold. Nobody wanted to pay for Unixmad's stupid server that was filled with a bunch of illegal content and stuff he didn't make. Nobody wanted to do that. These other game studios who are Enpulse, Delteria, Valicorlia, all these different servers, they were using the G server for their own independent games. And so that wasn't marketable either because they controlled their own content. It was their own games. So what Stefan and Unixmad needed to do is they needed to have a product that was making and generating revenue, and they didn't have one. So what they started to invent was this stupid term called the player world. So when Clash is sitting here telling me I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to prove to you guys. I finally got the fucking receipts. I'm going to prove to you guys what you needed to know. So basically, I've been saying for the last 10 years that Destiny was originally the first player world. It was an experimental player world sandbox. It was my game that was hosted on my own computer, my mother's computer. We had Roadrunner Internet. And after I had Stefan and Unixmad take a role in my screenplays, I had these screenplays where I was taking screenshots. We would all play out the roles, and then I would animate the GIF that had like hundreds of screenshots, and then you could watch the whole play take place. Stefan had already been like accessing my G server, which he didn't really do. Stefan didn't really access people's G servers much, but he was accessing mine because me and him were friends. Around this time, I had Destiny that was now finished, and I said, hey, remember when you joined my G server recently for the screenplays? I want you to come check out my game Destiny, and I'm going to do stuff to it that I'm going to maybe need you to improve in the video game software. So Stefan comes onto my server. And for whatever reason, what he ends up telling me is, he said, well, actually, we have this new thing called Player Worlds. It was just like the right time, I guess, for them, and the worst time for me, because this is when things got stolen from me. It happened to be around March and April of 2000. And Stefan was creating something new called Player Worlds. And so they were going to phase out the G server. Let me just show it to you. If we look in version 1.34, you can see here, if you unzip that package, you'll notice that these are all the files that were part of the game engine at this time. Some of these are sandbox files that Stefan is including in the package because he's working on features that aren't released yet, but you can still see the sandbox files in there. And so a lot of that stuff's included in here, various things that are experimental, and then a list of the new features that'll be included in this version. He'll drop like this text file that talks about the new features that are coming in this version. And if you look at the executable file, you can see the date where it was modified. You can see when that was released. So Graal version 1.34 was packaged and the executable was made complete on March 22nd of 2000. In this zip of files, you can see here, this is all that's there. There's no such thing as player worlds in here. But if we go on over to version 1.35, so there's that executable file where the executable is the latest compressed data. The rest of the files represent the sandbox files or various resources that the executable will need. So if we look at this folder here, what you'll notice is there's different things that in here that were not in version 1.34. We've got mappw.txt and mappw.png. So this is Stefan's first sandbox where it is revealed that he was working on the Playerworld concept. PW stands for Playerworld, where he's trying to get the feature working. And you can see a map of his sandbox test world that he was working on. So you've got Playerworld 2000, which stands for the new feature that he's trying to create. This was not accessible. This wasn't a real quote-unquote player world. It was just a sandbox test world that Stefan was putting together. So map PW is not a real world. You can see it says Player World 2000. If we go back and roll back to version 1.34, there is no map PW. There's no map PW. Version 1.35, map PW appears because this is the sandbox maps that Stefan was working with. There was no feature where you could actually switch between maps yet. It wasn't even ready. It wasn't even available yet. But you can see the first sandbox world that he was trying to just kind of generate and test with was March 26th, 2000. At the same time, Stefan released an online test player world called Mantara, which is Stefan's test sandbox player world. So this is one of the screenshots from the Graaloween party, and me and Stefan were in his house. It wasn't really a player world. It wasn't really marketed as a player world. It was a test sandbox. I, showed Stefan Destiny and stuff. And I'm just like, hey, this is progressing. Can you maybe help me with getting the word out to get people to play my game and stuff? And Stefan says to me, I have a new thing that I'm trying to create called Player Worlds. Nobody's used this feature yet. We would like to give you free hosting and use Destiny as a test for this feature. So Destiny will be the first player world, and we'll just test out players having their own player world on Unixmad's hosting. I said, okay, cool. Well, that sounds good because my mother has Roadrunners, not dedicated hosting. Set me up the login information, and that would probably be useful. And so he said, well, the way to access it is you have to teleport. You have to teleport to it through the main Graal server, just like Mantara. So everybody knows that Onet Town and Yrnir Town, they're the same town. And so Stefan had his house there where you could get to Mantara. I had an admin house in Onet Town too. People are saying that it's not true. My house was never in Onet Town. Nobody remembers it there. It's a lie. I made it up. I have been telling you guys for the last 10 years that Destiny was originally in Yrnir/Onet Town. It's the same town. There was a storybook in the back of my house that you could warp to Destiny. Stefan's house was right around the corner in the same town. You just walked up like a house or two away from my house and you could get to Mantara. So Destiny and Mantara were the first player world links, and Destiny was the quote-unquote first player world outside of the sandbox environment. Anyways, I'm going to show to you guys. So I went through all of the leaks from all of the different levels packs from over the years. So I used a Python script to scrape all of the files located in every nested zip file and used it to find all of the file names and all of the modified dates and print them in a list so I can search for it. There is an old record called Antago Graal. And this is the path to get to it in the Viper's Ultimate Leak Pack that people have had for the last 10 years. That's the path to it. It's there. It's in a zip file. Antago Graal. Modified April 30th, 2000. It's there, guys. It's real. And then it was moved. Do you see Antago House right above it? This was the July 4th when Destiny was like stolen from my hosting, and they forced it onto the main server by bullying and manipulating a child. The same day, remember those fireworks on the old screenshots? You see that? I just searched for Graal Classic screenshots, and it's the first one. And so if you go to this screenshot, you'll see Stefan's here, and he's saying, "Welcome, Destiny." Do you see that? And I'm saying, "Happy 4th of July." So anyways, you can see July 4th. Happy July 4th. Happy 4th of July. If you go to the Old Graal news, so here I am. I'm on the Old Graal Online website. And the side here, Graal version 1.38 Rev 1 is out for download. It's talking about Destiny is now online, and Graal has just finished celebrating for July 4th and the arrival of Destiny. So this happened on July 4th of 2000. And we know that's further true because if we look into the news, you can see here, July 5th of 2000. This was the day after. I said, hey, right now it just turned July 5th. So maybe I should say yesterday was a great success. The fireworks and Destiny arrival came perfectly as planned. I'm even talking about the screenshots that you can still see. And so then if you scroll down here, you can see that it's talking about how Destiny was released. And I'm talking about how I had to remove several hearts. See how it says Otherworlder? Otherworlder, because it was the first Playerworld. Guys, this is all going to make sense by the end of the video. Keep watching. Keep watching. Otherworlder. Destiny was originally my own game. It was a separate world. It was not a part of Graal Classic. At this time, the term Playerworld was so foreign and so new that I just put in quotes Otherworlder because nobody knew what Playerworld meant because it was the first Playerworld. And so I'm talking about my globe. My globe was my admin NPC. A Valoran gets access to upload to the main world. So Destiny was already uploaded, but not on the main world because it was the first Playerworld. Guys, follow along with me. Pay attention, guys. So there was Mantara, and then there was Destiny. Mantara, if you search for Mantara, you can find this old file leak here. It's in the old level, like extracts from Viper's leaks. And if you open it up and you look inside of it, it has a ton of my stuff in there. Antago level, different like, you know, Bomby Bop It like stuff and prizes and different Bomby Bop It character stuff I was working on. This is one of my characters I created. I love him. All this stuff in here, and this is my artwork. I was trying to color stuff using bevels because I didn't know how to airbrush at the time. So I thought I could like fake 3D with airbrushes and blurring. And just my different boots. This is a pair of boots nobody ever knew existed, the Butac boots. Yeah, and then here's like the Mantara levels, including like my Halloween shop and my Hyper Flash. I've lost most of the Skyworld stuff, but there was a Skyworld that belongs in Destiny and it's a part of Destiny. And so there's a Skyworld and the Underwater World. So like my stuff is mixed up with Stefan's fucking like stuff. Why? Because I'm the one who had access to Stefan's fucking Playerworld and stuff. Because me and him were working on the Playerworlds together. The first time the term Playerworld appears is right here. And what it meant was that they were now going to host other people's games on Unixmad server using his hosting. And that was referred to as Playerworld. He didn't own the rights to it. He just was going to host it within the same sphere and label it Playerworld. Before this, other people's games were just their own game on the separate G server, and they could market it and sell it themselves. With the player world, they were now going to try to steal everything, but they couldn't get people to do it first. They needed content to monetize. And so they started targeting me because I was their closest friend. And I was a child, and they knew they could do it. Stefan knew I was a suicidal child who my parents didn't love because I told him this. I told him. I trusted Stefan. I told him. I told Stefan why I was online all day making video games and stuff. We did screenplays together. We made art together. I talked to him about music. I talked to him about life. I talked to him about God. I talked to him about death. I talked to him about all kinds of different things. Stefan knew I was a suicidal 12-year-old when he met me, and that my family didn't love me, and that I was online making video games all day. He knew. He knew. And so when he decided to invent this thing called a player world, it was first, you can see here, the Graal client released April 13th, 2000. That was the first time the word player world appears. Well, when was Antago's house in Town? Modified. From 2000, April 30th, 2000, Antago Neariner. And then moved to the main server. So it was in my admin house. I had my own game. Destiny was my own game. You could get your own full hearts in there. You could expand your player. You could upgrade your player. There was tons of items in there. There was tons of quests. They weren't the best thing because a child made them, but I had a Sky World I was working on, Hyper Flash. They hacked my computer and deleted those. The only thing I still have left of those are the old file records listed on nix.org and some of the bosses that we were creating. The bosses. It was a massive world I was working on. The Galactica world that you could see on the map. I was working on this underwater world. Graal 2001 is my fucking game. I was working on that. That was my game too. Destiny was this massive fucking game thing that I was creating. And it had a sky world. It had an underwater world. Graal 2001, the content on there was an extension of Destiny. You could first get to Destiny through my house, my admin house. It was a separate game. So anyways, when Clash is telling me that I'm a liar and Valkyria was the first player world, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And just like going on and on telling me I don't know what I'm talking about and stuff. They're just lying to you. Everybody's been lying to you. Stefan's been lying to you. Do you remember that old screenshot where Stefan was like, I had nothing to do with Destiny. Destiny released after I left. We have screenshots of him saying, welcome Destiny. I'm telling you, Stefan is the one who helped steal it. And he had Mantara. So Stefan had Mantara. He didn't think that I could find all these archives. The universe is working in my favor, Stefan. You're going to have to fucking figure some other strategy out. Your lies are getting exposed, cunt. First and foremost, there's Mantara here, but there was no map for Mantara. In Stefan's house, you could get to Mantara. Antago's house was originally in Neariner Town, which is Onet Town. It's the same town. April of 2000. Originally, Destiny was a separate game you could warp to through my admin house. Do you see how they're fucking changing history and shit? Do you guys get it? Do you see how sick this is? The fact that they're manipulating your minds, they're lying to you. We've got weirdos lying to me, to my face, trying to manipulate me. And you guys think that I'm the one who's been mentally ill and manipulating you guys? If it wasn't for the fact that I started, oh God, I don't even want to go into it. It's just miracles have kept the fucking truth alive. You can't erase it. Stefan thought that all of the information was gone and they could destroy my fucking name and credibility into infinity. But the truth is out there, guys. There is a lone fucking file record that exists by a freak fucking fluke in the universe. This old Antago Neariner file exists. And everybody thought it was gone, and they were trying to erase history and claim it never happened. So check it out. Check this the fuck out. So Ethicon had been asking me about it. He's like, when was your house in Neariner Town or Onet Town? He's like, I can't find it anywhere. And he had been looking for years. He couldn't find it anywhere. Finally, I scraped all of these records and found nested zip files upon nested zip files and all the fucking shit. There's hundreds of them there. And I just searched through it, and just by a freak accident, I found this file name. I wasn't even looking for it. I didn't even know that it would be there. And I just happened to see this. It's there. The proof is there, dude. Check this out. So anyway, check it out. So I'm talking to Ethicon, and I said, Ethicon, I finally found that level proof that you were looking for. I said, there's a weird record of Antago Nirner in April of 2000. And then it was moved on July 4th, 2000. It's called the Boot Shop today. So when you go to the Boot Shop today, that's my house. Antago's Manor was originally in Onet Town. There it is. Ethicon pulls the file up, and he enters the fucking file. And here he is. You can see all my boots, a bunch of boots. So there's moon boots, disco boots, maybe. I remember these were the nuclear boots. These are the splash boots. This is the fly boots, the bomb boots, the Antago boots, the ice boots, the gravity boots, and the opposite boots. And so you could come in here and you could buy the opposite boots. And so, you could run from enemies and still shoot them with your bow at the same time. So like to me, opposite boots, they were one of my favorite boots. And so you could buy this from this thief for 1,000. So anyway, just like I had been telling you guys for a decade, you could go to my house in Onet Town and you could get the opposite boots and you could go through my storybook and you could warp to Destiny. Not only do we have that news post I was showing you, where was that? So in this news post, I'm talking about how Destiny was an other world. It was another world. Search on Google for Graal, Antago's house items, and it will pull up an old Angel Fire website. And there's an old website where you can get a guide to items on Graal. It doesn't load anymore. The website's down. But you can copy that URL. You can put it into archive.org like I did here. And you can see that you can get to Antago's Manor and you can get the trident in the house. You can get the opposite boots and Destiny. And it says don't ask because it was a new concept. There was no such thing as Playerworlds before Destiny. Except for Mantara, but that was Stefan's testing sandbox. And it was weird how you got there. You had to go read my book in the back of the house, and it was like falling into your imagination. You would fall into your imagination, and you would wind up in Destiny. So it was a separate game. It was a different story. And so you can see on this old items page, it's literally talking about how to get to Destiny through my manor. How is that possible? Unless it was the first experimental Playerworld. So anyways, we go back to Graal version 1.35. This is when the first sandbox of Stefan's Playerworld testing environment appears in the zip file that was for download for the new executable. That is marked April 13th, 2000. You can see my house was being edited around this time. It was an experimental thing. And that goes back to that screenshot I've showed you guys, the horror them. So there's this old screenshot, and I had to do a report on it. And somebody found it. I don't know where they found it. So you can see here, spiders in there. And this person here who's taking the screenshot. And you can see it says Antago admin. At this point, my house was in Onet Town. It was in Nirner Town. And I said, get off my horse or I will jail you. And he said, LOL, you've got to be kidding me. After this screenshot, I said no, because what happened was the player worlds were so new, you got to them through these warps in our houses, just like you could see here. Mantara, you had to warp through it. But it was on a separate FTP host, like the news post was saying. And so when you went through the portal, you could carry items between games. And they were separate games. You weren't allowed to do that. And so I had horses that were part of Destiny. It was a separate game. And people figured out that you could get onto horses in the separate games and you could exploit the bug and you could cheat and you could take it through from one game to the next. And they were separate games. So Mantara was a separate game. It's a separate world. The Player World's just released. They just released. There were so many bugs and glitches that I couldn't even keep track of them. I was just a kid. And so one of them was you could take horses. If your player was sitting on a horse and you went through the warp, that horse would travel with you into the next game. And it wasn't even part of the same game because this one you could have full hearts and your full hearts didn't follow through with you. But if you carried objects or you rode horses, you could take horses or carry objects between games because there was a bug. It was a glitch. And so I'm telling him to get off of my horse from the other game because he was cheating. You can see it. Go look through the old files. This is the Destiny horse. It's the Antago orange Destiny horse. It was part of a separate game. It wasn't even a part of Graal Classic. You can see here that the dates all line up. Mantara doesn't even have a map in the files here. Do you see that? Look at the map here. This was the first time that the Playerworld test environment Stefan was working on appears. Look at the map. Nobody wanted to pay to fucking play this thing. They couldn't sell this. They could not sell this. They tried. Nobody would pay for it. Other people's games on their own G servers, they owned those. Stefan didn't own those. Unixmad didn't own those. And so they started inventing this thing called Playerworld, and they were going to steal my games so that they could steal other people's games. They could convince other people to give them their games because they needed money to fall back on. If they had no income, they couldn't make that move, because what would happen then is they could make a move and tell people, give me your games or I'll ban you, or we're closing down the G server. But then what? They close down the G server and they have no income and nobody wants to pay for this? It wasn't going to happen. Nobody was paying for the other fucking G server either. Valkyria had existed since 1999, but it wasn't a Playerworld. It was just a game on somebody else's G server. Nobody was paying to play that. Nobody was paying to play NPulse. Nobody was paying to play Delteria or any of these other fucking games. Nobody cared about these fucking games. Nobody was paying to fucking play these things. Nobody was paying to play this. So they couldn't shut down the G server until they had a game that was making money, and that was mine. They were going to target me and start taking my stuff. This is how they convinced everybody to give them their games. So you can't just start shutting down the G server and replacing it with Playerworlds and telling people that we're going to be hosting your files now and controlling your stuff when they have no income. Because nobody's going to invest in that model. They'll be like, no thanks. You're not a successful business person. Why would I give somebody who has no money and who's making no money off of his own game, this fucking Graal Classic thing here? You're not making any money. You haven't been making money for fucking 2-3 years. Why would I give you my games? So they needed to steal my stuff and start selling that in order to make this work. Pay attention, guys. Stefan knew I was a suicidal 12-year-old and my family disowned me when we first met. I was 13 when he decided to start stealing Destiny from me. By this time, he knew I had made my own games and that I was really good and I was really creative and I had a lot of people following my websites. So anyways, the map feature didn't work. Yeah, I was the first and only Playerworld, apart from Mantara, which was Stefan's testing online Playerworld. Destiny was the first Playerworld. It was the only one. You could not get the map to switch between the two maps. So I had to put Destiny's map on the Graal Classic map. That's why that stuff is there. And it looks so out of place. I had to put it on the main map. You can see here, he was trying to get the Playerworld feature working. He was inventing this thing called Playerworlds, which was just them hosting other people's games on Unixmad server and getting to switch between the maps and stuff. He couldn't even get this feature to work yet. He was trying to. You can see he has the test files are there. And so my house is from April. At this time, he's like asking me to be his first Playerworld. I was like, whatever, dude. I was like, yeah, that's good free hosting. I'll take it. There's no fucking terms and conditions. It wasn't uploaded through a website. It was done through direct FTP. It's my fucking content, guys. It's my content. It's my content. I was a child. This is from May. Do you see that? The map was modified on May 12th. Finally, I just threw my map on to the main map so that you could at least see it when you warped, because you couldn't switch maps yet. The feature was still in development. So anyways, yeah, so if you look here, this was May 12th of 2000, the executable. The map was also updated at the next release, which was a month later, which is version 1.36. You can see it all in the same package. There's no Mantara map, even though Mantara was still accessible. So this is a later in the year screenshot of it, but Mantara was accessible in Stefan's house since about March, April, the same time as mine. So take a look at this screenshot where Ethicon came outside of the house after entering it using the level editor. It took him exactly right here, in front of this house in Onet Town. So clearly the house was there, and the warp was there. I had him convert it to a .nw. So if you look inside of the text file as it was converted to an NW, well, you can see it links directly to Onet Town. And you can see in the text here where it says, hello, if you're reading this, I've gone to my continent and am resting in my tower. And you would warp there, like you could see on the items page. This is how you got there. It was a separate game, which is why it had its own full hearts and all those items I had to start removing. I had access to Mantara's files, which is why if you look at the old Mantara zip files, I'm the only one who had the fucking files. Why did I have those files? Why isn't when you go look at the fucking old Mantara zip files, it's got my personal fucking files in there. My personal art files, things that I was working on, Destiny stuff, art files, different graphics, other stuff that's unrelated, Bomby files, all kinds of weird stuff. So anyways, yeah, where were we? So like, you could not look at Mantara's map. It wasn't accessible. Mantara's map was not accessible because Playerworlds were just a new thing he was working on. He was testing it. He was using me like a test rat. And so the maps would not change. And so what we decided was we would just put Destiny on the main map so that even though you couldn't see where you were, you could open the map and still see. So it was shoved off to the side. So this was under construction. I was working on Glottica. There was also a sky world called Hyperflash. If we can find my old hard drive somewhere, if an archaeologist can find this, there was a sky world, and we need to get those files because they're fucking historical. They're cool. I still believe in Graal. I don't care if other people do or don't. But anyways, so Destiny, you could see it on the map, but you couldn't see where you were in it because we couldn't get the maps to flip yet. They wouldn't change. We couldn't get it to change maps when you went between worlds. And so what happened was, at this time, eventually at some point, Destiny was literally released. The Destiny map appears before Mantara because me and him were both the first two Playerworld experiments. And that's when, again, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about money here. We're talking about marketing. We're talking about real world sales. And so Destiny was the first one that they stole from somebody other than themselves. They stole it from me. And they were marketing it as the first Playerworld. And so anyways, yeah, if we go to version 1.37, you can see we're like now toward the end of May. He released it early because he was working on Playerworlds. This is why. So he started doing lots of updates fast. So it jumped from 1.36 to 1.37, 2 weeks later or so. So let's look at the files now, right? Destiny's map has grown. Again, you still couldn't see yourself in these levels. You couldn't see yourself in the levels, but I had to put them on the main map because you couldn't flip between maps. Stefan was now trying to figure out how to get maps to change. So do you see how he now has a mini map and a big map TXT file and a map PNG for Mantara? We're now at the end of May. You could change maps. Do you see that? But he finally got it working. And so Mantara finally has a map. This is at the end of May now. Finally, Stefan is getting the feature to work properly. So he goes ahead and he creates one for Mantara. At this time, he contacts me and he says, we can create maps for Destiny now. And we can switch between the maps in the live server. So now I'm working on trying to figure out how to do that. I don't really know how to because I was a child. And so 1.38, I'm still working on just changing the map on the main map because I don't know how to get it to change yet. And Stefan is still working on that feature and he's kind of getting it to work for Mantara. I'm having it on this main map. You can see that this is not a part of the main world. Do you see how like the clouds are being blocked off and there's this big giant rectangle in Glottica here? It doesn't look like it belongs to the rest of the world. It's because it was a separate fucking world, dude. It wasn't even their world. It was mine. It was my separate game that you could access from my house. I'm like expanding my map, making it look cuter. It's finally a nice big rectangle looking a certain way. Now it looks a lot more attractive. And, you know, Galactica's still part of it. I was working on Hyperflash, this big giant like sky world. Oh, God, I love Hyperflash. I wish that never got lost. Parts of it we still have. But anyways, you can see this looks like a separate fucking game. And it is. So I'm squaring it off so that I could start to create a separate map for it. And at this time, they find an excuse to tell me that I'm not allowed to have Destiny anymore. And so what happens is they end up moving it to the main world. And so it's no longer a separate world. I have to start removing items from it, and they start moving it to the main map and basically just stealing Destiny and claiming it's Graal Classic. And the reason that happened is because if you go back, so if we go back through the different updates of 1.3 in the new features 1.39 text file, the term Playerworld doesn't exist anywhere. I'm searching for it. You see me typing it? Now check that out. It exists with a space in it. It used to have a space because it wasn't really a real term. They were like using Destiny to Trojan horse this new bullshit fucking agenda to start stealing everybody else's games because they couldn't make any money. Nobody wanted to give these fucking scam artists money. And they were always being called scam artists, and everybody was telling them, you stole Zelda. And I'm just an innocent child. I don't even know what's going on at this point. So they start using Destiny to try to create this fake thing called Playerworlds. So Playerworlds didn't come till 1.35. That wasn't released until April 13th. The same time as my house in Onet Town, Antago Graal, is when my house was being edited, at least. And that's when Destiny became available around that time. And you saw that around 1.36 is the first time I threw it on a shared map, even though they were two separate games. And it appeared on the map. It was already there like around April. So 1.35. And so anyways, the term Playerworld didn't even fucking appear, dude. It didn't even fucking appear until like 1.35. And then the first time it even showed up in text was 1.39. I knew what Playerworld was. Stefan is mentioning in 1.39, check this out. You don't see the word failed when warped between levels of a Playerworld anymore. It was a separate game. They just offered me free hosting. And then they weaseled it into shoving it into Stefan's failed fucking game. Into Unixmad's failed game that they call Graal Classic. They weaseled it into there. And then they stole Graal 2001 from me. And then so Graal Classic became Graal 1. And then Graal 2001, or Graal Bomby Moon, as many people know it, New Main. It had a bunch of names. It was Graal New Main, Graal 2001, and Graal Bomby Moon was the name they finally settled on. That was my game too. I created that fucking game. And that was called Graal 2. That was the Graal sequel. And then Graal Kingdoms was a perverted version of my game. That was Graal 3. So that was a trilogy. That's the trilogy that built the company. It's Graal Classic, Graal 2001, which is Graal Bomby Moon. That's my fucking game. Graal Classic, they shoved Destiny and stuff in there. And I lost... Oh, God, there was so much stuff that Destiny was going to be. All the bombies were going to be in there. There's going to be the sky world. There's going to be these birds that flew everywhere, and they were neat. There's going to have all these other, like, weird creatures I was creating. And had the underwater world, Galactica I was working on. It was just going to be so good. And it's just so fucking long and complicated just how much they fucking destroyed it and stole everything and vandalized it and perverted it and kept me away from things and banned me from parts of it, ripped it apart, and then forced me to do other shit in weird places I didn't want to fucking do it. So like all of my content was being like fucking hacked and deleted. It's just like a mess. But it's a real tangible fucking world, dude, in a game. It belongs to me, and only the creator can tell you what it is. Destiny it's bigger than you guys have been led to believe. They've ripped it apart, and like there is no Graal sequel. Graal 2001 is my game, and Graal Kingdoms is just a fucking perverted version of my fucking game. So there is no trilogy. And Graal Classic is just a big fucking failed mess where they just shoved my stuff into it. They tried stealing from Pachuca, and he said no. So then they invented this fake thing called Playerworlds and used it to rob a child. Anyways, But Destiny was bigger than that. It had Hyperflash. It had this beautiful sky world with these weird creatures and crazy bosses and like it was just so cool. And it was like icy. It was like these ice kind of world in the clouds. It was really fucking magical and beautiful. For a child's imagination, it was so cool. Unfortunately, I got hacks and Stefan and them like stole all my stuff, ripped it apart, and I was never able to release the Sky World, even though it's officially a part of Destiny. You can see I've talked about it in news posts and stuff. I've talked about it on the message boards. Galactica was on the map. You can see I was planning to release this underwater world. I was working on it. That never got fucking released. It just disappeared with the wind, like Atlantis. And so, anyways, when Stefan's talking about Playerworld, this is just a scam. They were just like finding an excuse to get a hold of people's files so that they could steal it and claim they owned it. And because they lived in Europe, they knew they could get away with it. So they started targeting children in America, right? And Stefan knew I was an abused child and my family didn't love me because I was online all day and I told him I was suicidal and that I was online making stuff all day. He knew, and he knew everybody was bullying me and robbing me. So he knew he could turn people against me and try to push me to suicide and to humiliate and destroy my name and get away with it. He knew. Stefan knew my situation. He knew it. He absolutely knew it. And then when they found out I was gay because people were hacking me and they were going through my porn drive and started sexually humiliating me and harassing me and releasing my porn, and everybody was going to just like bully me and call me a faggot and tell me to fucking die, he knew they were good. He knew that they could just steal fucking everything, rip it apart, call me a liar, twist my arguments, make me look like a fucking idiot, and just run away in Germany and Paris where they lived it up off stuff they didn't create because nobody wanted to buy their stuff. And so they started paying for my stuff. And so Unixmad and Stefan said, you're not paying for Antago stuff. That's our stuff. You're paying for our stuff. That's my money. That's going to our pockets and our business now. He doesn't get stuff. He didn't make anything. We're the geniuses. We are the success story. And they weren't. They weren't a success story. Nobody wanted to pay for Stefan and Unixmad stuff. They never did. How long did it take for Graal Classic to become monetized? Wasn't that it was like over 10 years. And that still had like a bunch of my stuff on it. And when Graal 2001 launched, Destiny and Galactica were still on the map. So Graal Classic was the free version, and then Graal 2001, my other fucking game, was the paid version. So they had the free and the paid version, the first one, and then the sequel is what they were calling it. And it was marketed on their website. You can go look at the old website. And so people saw this giant map on Graal Classic filled with my levels, and they were like, wow, Stefan and Unixmad are magnificent video game developers and geniuses. They weren't. They just robbed an American kid who was being abused and knew they could fucking continue doing it forever because they knew I had nobody backing me up. And so I was silenced for over a decade. I'm never shutting up now. I'll fucking kill for it. You're not going to fucking get away with doing that to me. And so anyways, they had nothing. Nobody wanted to buy their stuff. But then suddenly Destiny and Galactica are on the fucking map and they're like, oh, well, that's a good free version. Look at all this content. This is good. This isn't just some Zelda shithole ripoff that we saw, a year ago that was free. There's all this other cool stuff. There seems to be like a bunch of new stuff on the horizon. And then Graal 2001, wow, this is cool. You can play as Bommies. You can run around. We got NPC servers now. We got all this, weird new towns and different ideas and concepts. We're going to pay to play that. And then my new Graal lot system with the currency, they sold the shit out of that. And so all this stuff that they fucking stole from me, dude, this Lactic Labs, I had this cool time system in my fucking game. They're just selling and selling and selling it. And Unixmad's going to all these trade shows selling my fucking stuff and pretending he made it. Unixmad literally never made anything. He never talked to us. He never played the games. He was just some dude running a server in Paris. And then one day after they stole all my games, suddenly Unixmad enters the scene and he's online all the time. And then he's running around to trade shows with posters of my games claiming he made it. You guys don't understand how fucking insane this is. Sold all of my stuff, and they swore up and down they made it. Suddenly, Unixmad came out of the woodwork, and it was no longer just some guy hiding in the background with a server. He was now, taking photos of himself. He was renting spaces with my money. He was hiring people with my money. He was paying people with my money to attack me. and to call me a liar and to dilute the story of where it all came from. Selling it! Unixmad had nothing to do with Graal 2001. Nothing to do with it. Just one day they stole it. And then Unixmad was running around everywhere. Stefan put him up to it. And he had posters of Graal 2001 behind him. He had a website he put up about it, which is my game, and claiming it was his. Swearing he created these games and that he owned them. You guys, you're fucking living my life. This guy stole my fucking life and created a company with it. Nobody wanted to buy what Graal was. They didn't even have Playerworlds. They used my shit as a quote-unquote testing grounds for Playerworlds to steal it.